Hello there, and here we are with day 13 of Habibi by Naomi, Shihab. I am going to be starting off today reading on page 189 with the chapter titled 15. And the quote that the author has put at the top of this chapter is, "Before anything was written, where was I?" Interesting. That night, Leanna dreamed a cake fell off its plate into the sea and floated away from her. She reached wildly with both arms, standing knee-deep in the pool of powerful waves. And it was Omer she was calling to. "Save it! Can you reach it?" But she was swimming too far out. Then she was shouting and waving, "I'm sorry! I wanted to share it with you." But he could not hear her. He was swimming the other direction, and the cake was drowning. When Leanna woke on her birthday, her mother was singing in the hallway. Poppy joined in an off-key as he stepped into the bathroom, and Rafik pretended to be playing a trombone. "Pancakes for breakfast!" Leanna's place at the breakfast table was surrounded by cheerful hand-drawn cards with yellow magic marker daisies. "A decade and a half," Rafik had written. "Is that an antique yet?" Poppy wrote half his card in English and half in Arabic. "To my soon-to-be bilingual daughter," the English said. Leanna could make out letters in the Arabic by now, ones that looked like chimneys or fluted edges, but she couldn't really make out words yet. So he helped her read it. "I am proud of you. What a year it has been." Mom just said, "To my queen," at 15 in calligraphy. She was already sitting up, stirring up batter for a pineapple upside-down cake, Leanna's favorite. "I had a weird dream about a cake," Leanna said. When Poppy went downstairs to get his gift for Leanna out of the trunk of the car, 15 new notebooks, including some fancy European ones, and 15 new pens, he found a mysterious silver package sitting on the step. He carried it upstairs, held far out from his body, saying, "Isn't it sad what one thinks about these days? Should we get a bomb-sniffing dog? In the old days, people never thought about such things." Since it had Leanna's name handwritten and spelled correctly on a card at the top, she opened it and gasped. Anybody guess who it's from? Inside was the green lamp she'd first asked Omer about at the Sandurini's ceramic shop, the one too expensive to buy for herself. A tightly folded note was taped to it. "Don't worry, I traded labor, not cash. Happy birthday, Omer." "Aw, I guessed it right, did you?" Leanna wondered how he got to her house so early to deliver it. He must have taken a taxi from Jerusalem, dropped it off, and ridden the same taxi back. Poppy said dourly, "Is this an appropriate gift for a young man to give a young woman?" Her mother said, "It's fine. It's not jewelry or clothing. It's not silver or gold. Don't give her any trouble." All day at school, when Leanna described the scene at City's bathroom, smashing the chips of ceramic in waterlogged rooms, her classmates shrugged. People got used to disasters. No one was even killed. Leanna felt distracted during class. She always had mixed feelings on her birthdays. She gazed out the school window at the changing clouds, casting a flurry of words toward Omer's side of the city. "I miss you. I want to see you. You would never do something like those soldiers did." But she wrote only 5 words down in her new notebook. "I love your amazing memory." And our next chapter is called History of Kissing. Interesting. And the quote that the author put was, "I would like to know the story of every little thing." Rafik and Leanna dressed one of the sleeping chickens in the hen house in a brocade tunic Leanna had sewn especially for her from a wide silver and burgundy scrap her friend Bilal had given her. They imagined what it would be like for Ayam Janan, their landlord's sleepy wife, to discover her hen wearing a lavish robe as if she'd been crowned queen at midnight. Leanna had had a hard time sewing the things so the hen's legs could poke out where they needed to. She even fitted her once in the dark. Rafik wanted Leanna to sew a bonnet as well, but she thought that might be a little much. The hen mumbled cozily in their hands. Leanna said, "I hope this won't give her bad dreams or anything." Once the robe was tied on and the hen's legs came through the bottom, she rippled her body back and forth as if to see how much she could still move. Did she think it was a new suit of feathers? They photographed her with their mother's flash camera, which seemed to upset her more than the dress did. Rafik said, "I don't think she likes having her wings pressed down," but she settled back into her nest and closed her eyes. The next morning they were anxious to get to the American Library, where they often went on Saturdays to do their hideous homework. Afterward, they'd meet Poppy for lunch and have minty ice cream at the YMCA next door. At breakfast, Rafik kept glancing out the window toward the hen house. He said, "Drive us, Poppy. Let's go now." What if Anan Janans saw the chicken and screamed instead of laughed? They wanted to be gone when she discovered it. At their gleaming library table, Leanna felt distracted. She kept getting up to pull reference books off the shelves and flip through their pages. She found some really old ones about Palestine with intricate drawings of the old city in them. In a 1926 book called Life in Palestine When Jesus Lived, she read, the people were constantly at work. How many languages were spoken? What differences of color, look, habit, manner, dress must have been seen. On her birthday after school, she had called Omer to thank him for the wonderful surprise, and his mother, who didn't speak English very well, answered the phone. Leanna had to ask for him 3 times. Omer seemed shy when she waved over her lamp. He just said, when she raved over her lamp, sorry about that. He just said, "Read some good books under it, okay?" and asked what she had been doing lately. They hadn't been able to share their lunch breaks for a few weeks since he'd been practicing for a debate tournament with his team at lunchtime. Leanna had mentioned more than once that she and Rafik would be studying at the American Library in Jerusalem on Saturday. Now she kept hoping secretly Omer would show up. So when the heavy green library doors squeaked open again, after admitting nuns and the Italian man who ran the matches factory and his daughter, and 6 blonde tourists with turquoise backpacks, and Omer finally stepped through, wearing a checkered yellow shirt and looking quizzical. Leanna rose joyously to greet him, and then they hugged tightly for the first time. She pressed her face against his shoulder. It smelled like sun. Leanna introduced Omer to Rafik, who said only, "Is it true you play soccer?" Omer folded an origami ball for him from a piece of notebook paper and batted it across the table. "I made the ball so you could make the goal," he whispered. They tackled their respective heaps of homework, whispering, laughing, and joking, till the librarian stood over their table saying, "You will please keep your silence or I will be forced to ask you to leave." Then it was harder than ever not to laugh. Leanna was writing about Mark Twain since he too lived in Missouri, her old state, and no one else in her class had chosen an American for their author's report. Everyone else was doing someone like Shakespeare, Dante, or John Milton. When she went to search for the library's tattered copy of Huckleberry Finn on the far shelves of fiction, To compare the older edition with her own, Omer walked to the end of the same aisle to study the giant map of the world on the wall, copying some town names from Russia in his notebook. "We have to write about the places our ancestors came from," he said. She had not known his grandparents were from Russia till now. Leanna kept thinking how everybody was a little like everybody else, and nobody was the same. She thought of those snowflake and fingerprint stories about the perfect uniqueness of each one and wondered, are we supposed to feel good about that? She wanted one snowflake to resemble another one now and then. She even imagined she carried some essence of Mark Twain inside herself, which was why he appealed to her so much. Twain didn't like the Middle East, though. She wouldn't quote anything he'd said on his dopey travels through the Middle East. Somehow, she couldn't bear to return to their table while Omer still stood at the end of the aisle. She felt suspended, reading spines of other books, held fast by his presence close by. She whispered "Chilly Willy" under her breath. He turned then and caught her staring at his back. He came over beside her and whispered, "What are you thinking about?" Her throat felt thick with a wish to say simply, "You," but she said, "Mark Twain." He touched her elbow gently, leaned forward, and placed his beautiful mouth on hers. A kiss, wild river, sudden over stones, as startling as the first time, but nicer, since it happened in the light, and bigger than the whole deep ache of blue. It didn't go away right away. It held as Omer gently held her elbow, cupped in his hand, warmth spilled between them. Leanna said, I like you." Or Leanna, he said, I like you." "Oh," she said, "me too. I like you." And he said, "You are not mad?" "No." He smiled. "I don't think the books are mad." He kissed her again on her right cheek, only delicately as a feather's touch, and the librarian pushed a cart past their aisle, not even glancing in their direction. After they returned in their newly dazzled state to the cluttered table where Rafiq was drawing an elaborate soccer field on 4 pieces of notebook paper laid out end to end, Omer leaned over him and said, "I have bad news, new friend. I have to go to my own soccer game right now. Would you like to come with me?" Rafiq couldn't because he and Leanna were meeting Poppy at the Philadelphia for a late lunch at 2, but Leanna could tell he was pleased. Leanna and Omer traded a long glance as he left. They grinned easily. She placed one finger on her vivid lips. Rafiq didn't notice. Then she walked over to Reference and slid an encyclopedia off a shelf to see if kissing had an entry, but nothing appeared between Kishinev, the capital of Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic of the USSR, and Kissinger, Henry, born in Germany and a naturalized American like her father. Well, she thought, sort of like her father. Her father didn't care for him. There was no kissing in the encyclopedia. She wondered, where did kissing come from? Who started it? She knew about the Eskimo tribes who liked nose-rubbing more than kissing. She was glad she hadn't been born into one. She made a kissing list in her notebook. Lemony lips, warm magnets pulling toward one another, streets crisscrossed by invisible tugs, secret power fields, electrodynamics. Then she wandered over to the newly arrived shelf. She thought she should live on that shelf herself, and placed her hand directly on a book called A Natural History of the Senses by Diane Ackerman. Flipping it open, she discovered a whole astonishing chapter called Kissing in the section called Touch. She took the book to their table, spread with Rafiq's information on famous rivers of the world, and shielded it from Rafiq to read. There are wild, hungry kisses, or there are rollicking kisses. There are kisses fluttery and soft as feathers as cockatoos. Leanna had never touched a cockatoo, but she liked how it sounded. She wrote down a first line that said, "Being good felt like a heavy coat, so I took it off." Ooh. The author, Diane, talked about the memory of kissing in high school, using a rich string of adverbs, inventively, extravagantly, delicately, elaborately, fugitively. When she met in the hallways between classes, soulfully in the shadows at concerts, we kissed articles of clothing or objects belonging to our boyfriends. We kissed our hands when we blew our boyfriends' kisses across the street. We kissed our pillows at night. Oh. And Leanna knew this book was for her. But last night, the very night before today, she had kissed her pillow and thought she might be cracking up. So I guess she knows she's not. And that is the end of our reading for today.